Hey everyone. This time we read The Legend of Dragon Quest by Daniel Andreyev. So I really hated this book. I have so many more negatives to say about it than I do positives. I'll just run through this as quick as I can because I honestly don't really want to have to deal with this book anymore. So I think the book was originally written in French. I have an English translation of it, and the English translation is just, it's pretty terrible. I don't know if it makes more sense to read this in French. I really didn't feel like doing that because I would have to go and learn French and then read this. The English translation, I don't know what happened with it, whether or not the original text didn't do the translator any favors, or she just did her best to kind of get the nonsense into English and then didn't really go back to make sure her translation made any sense. So I think this book might have been like a fan project or something, which probably explains why it's, at least the English version, is so poorly written. I'm going to compare it a little bit to the Service Games book because that's another Kickstarter book that I read that was actually, it wasn't great, but it was at least competently done. There are errors in it, but it wasn't just an absolute mess like this one was. So Service Games had issues with its like historical events and everything, and it mentioned some stuff that I don't think was really true or had been like said later, where they ignore the previous statements where, you know, things were also explained. It's a really confusing book to talk about, but he at least, you know, put forth as his best effort. He had his sources, but they weren't included in the book. The problem with this book is the sources are there, but I don't know where he's actually like using his sources. He uses a lot of footnotes. I don't understand why he's using footnotes in some cases, because the way he uses his footnotes is like the most just nonsensical thing that I could possibly think of. Normally footnotes are used as a way to sort of expand on your thought in the paragraph, where the footnote doesn't necessarily connect to what's in that paragraph. It's just sort of a way to say, you know, this is another thing that was happening at the time. The way Daniel uses these things, I got even more confused by reading his footnote, because often the footnote should have been in the goddamn paragraph. It adds nothing to it by, you know, giving me a sentence, throwing a footnote on it, and then when I jump down to read the footnote, it should have just been a continuation of the sentence I had just read. I don't understand why the hell he did that. There'll be like chapters where there are 50 goddamn footnotes that don't belong in the book whatsoever. It was just mind-boggling to read through it. I don't understand why he used them in the way that he did. I don't understand why probably 90% of the footnotes are even in the goddamn book. So I'm sorry that I'm ranting about these footnotes here, but it really pissed me off when I was reading through them. Because this is supposed to be a history book. At least I think it's supposed to be a history book. It honestly read more like a propaganda piece where the author had only played the Dragon Quest games and had no knowledge of anything outside of them. So after all of that, there's other weird stuff that goes on in this. I would read a paragraph and then go to the next paragraph and feel like I just missed a page of text that should have been there. It made no sense. There were spots where things just weren't connected in any way, and it just drove me crazy while I was reading through it to try to like keep pace with what he was talking about. So now that I've gotten a lot of the things that I had issues with in this book out, and I'm really sorry. I really hated this book. Some of the positives with it: the first couple of chapters, after you get past his 3 goddamn introductions, the first couple of chapters are pretty nice. They go through kind of the people that made the games, some of the inspirations for it, but even the inspirations are pretty badly done. but we do get some background on the people who created the games, and those were really the more interesting parts. You get to learn about how they started out in the industry and that sort of thing, which was pretty interesting to me when I was reading through those, and it kind of gave me hope that the rest of the book was going to be good, and those hopes were very quickly dashed. So yeah, those are the only positives that I can say about this. Those first like two or three chapters, those were pretty good. He does go through the games, like the series, in a pretty linear way, which I kind of appreciate. But yeah, he just talks so glowingly. It's almost like he's just totally delusional about what was going on with the video game industry at the time that these games were being made. He just... it's... Reading through this book, you would think that RPGs began with Dragon Quest, and there was nothing made before it, and there was nothing like of any note being made alongside of the series. It's just really bizarre to go through and read it. He talks about how Dragon Quest did like all of these things first, and I'm like, no, I just kept thinking, I'm like, no, that's not true. I don't understand what the hell you're talking about when you go through some of these things, because it reads like a propaganda book for the Dragon Quest series. There is a missed opportunity in this book that I want to mention, and that's when we get to like the merger of Enix and Squaresoft. I feel like more could have been done with that than what actually was in here. And that probably... it probably could have been like its own book in general, and that's kind of something that I would like to read about. You get sort of teased a little bit. You mostly get from the Enix perspective. He does mention a few of the Squaresoft things, but it just kind of felt like at that point I was just really done with the book. So what would have made this book better? First off, cut out the second introduction and the preface. They are totally not needed in this book. You've already got a journalist that introduces the book for you. Keep that and leave it alone. Next, this needed a much better editor to go through and like kind of clean something up. And I don't know if the author steamrolled his editor by just like ignoring their suggestions, but something needed to happen to make this a lot better than what it really was, and maybe, having a better idea of what you wanted to write about and actually going through a better research process, that would have helped out this a lot more. Also, having a better focus for really the entire book, like a better game plan for it, would have helped out an awful lot. I didn't really know if this was supposed to be a history book, if this was supposed to be like a celebration of Dragon Quest, or what exactly he was going for with this, but something had to be done to make this a lot better than what it really was. So that being said, guys, I cannot recommend this book at all. I had an awful time reading it. I honestly had to put it down and read a totally different book in between this, because I just got so frustrated and fed up with going through this thing. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I know it came off as me just rambling and complaining a lot, and I'm sorry about that. So anyway, please let me know what you think in the comments below, and have a great day, everyone.